Okay, thank you everybody for coming out today. We are going to talk about a few couple small minor things. Probably will be a shorter meeting today. But we wanted to kind of go over some of the basics as we are ending the program year. Um, we wanted to talk about some achievements and some GED stuff, and then we're going to highlight just a couple of quick bigger things that are coming out in our next update in about 2 weeks. So as we get started, the question that we always have about your data maintenance. Have you logged into UASIS recently? We want to make sure that you that you are able to log in. I have heard of a couple of issues with resetting passwords. So if you are running into those, please send us an email. I am going to be looking at potentially a different way to reset passwords. I'm going to do some debugging first before we do that. But if you can't get logged in, please let us know. We need you to be logged in, as you need to enter your data on a bi-weekly basis every 2 weeks. That answers the second question of have you entered your data recently? Most programs are really pretty good about entering your data at least weekly, but again, our policy states every 2 weeks. So please make sure that that's in. That does help us as we are reaching out, making sure that things are going well and that there are any sort of issues within data entry can be resolved in a quick manner. Um, the other last thing is, have you set an entering EFL for each of your students? That is something that we want to make sure gets happened. Again, the primary way to enter these is through a pre and post, or through a pre-test for our students. Remember last month that we did release a new page that you need to enter for your students that have separated but have had 12 hours. So please double check, make sure that that's is up to date as well. If you have any other questions about entering EFLs or whatnot, please reach out. We are happy to chat. So let's jump into today's topics, which is all about achievements. Last month, we talked about post-exit achievements and the new abilities that we had about making phone calls. And I have seen in the database that we have done that. So congratulations for those that have figured it out. For those that have not, please let me know if you have any questions. We've created a couple of how-tos that have been really good on how we can do this. But entering achievements inside of UASIS is a fairly simple process. It's easy just by clicking on the achievements button on on the student that you would like to make this achievement to. And then you'll have to enter one of the 3 achievements. Now we're going to talk specifically today about MSG achievements, our other achievements tab, and the Utah achievements as well. We're going to talk a little bit about each one of these, what's consistent in each one of those, and what happens when you do mark some of those. So under the MSG achievements, the reason these are titled MSG achievements are these are ones that will achieve an MSG for a student, be that an HSE MSG or be that the IET MSG. Now for the HSE MSG, we have the adult education and the GED. If those get marked, the HSE GE or MSG for the student will get marked with the date that you entered in or that the system entered in if it was a GED data match. The other 3 are all IET MSGs, which are passing technical occupational exams, progress towards a milestone, and secondary or post-secondary transcript. Now, I mentioned that these are for IET students. That does not limit you to entering those for any student. You can enter those achievements if they did pass one of those. However, in order for us to report those federally wise, a student must have an IET program enrollment entered on their account in order for these to be marked for us. So if you have questions about what counts for each one of these, please reach out. We are happy to kind of help you, walk you through the process of what those all are. One thing that we have noticed as we have done our program monitoring visits, specifically with our data visits, is that some programs are adding an adult education diploma for a student. Now, if you are trying to enter an adult education diploma since 2008, which is when the first Utopia came around, so between 2008 to now, please double check with us through the webmaster to make sure that we don't have record of it first, because that way I can then import it. We do know that between Utopia 1.0 and Benchmarks Utopia that there were a handful of diplomas that didn't get transitioned transitioned over for one reason or another. I am looking at a process in order to get those all inside of the system. However, I have yet to complete that, as I need to make sure that I don't double add it for anybody, which is the problem that I'm running into. So if you have an adult ed diploma that you are trying to add, please contact us first, especially if it's after 2008. If it's before 2008, you must make sure you have documentation. That's the same thing for the GED as well. Make sure you have the documentation in there in the student's record before you add it into that record. That is something we will double check as you do add any sort of achievement, specifically these MSG achievements. Jumping into our other achievements, these are other achievements that can be marked. They don't count as MSG achievements, so they won't show on any of our federal tables. However, if you deal with students that are in family literacy programs or IELCE programs, these achievements can be marked, and we do report on them on some of our other federal tables. Again, these are not MSGs, but we do report on them. So for family literacy, you have one of the 7 that you could do, which is help more frequently with schools, increase contact with children's teachers, left public assistance, more involved in children's school activities, purchasing books or magazines, reading to children, and visiting libraries. Now, again, as I mentioned, these don't need to be only for those that are in family literacy. Any student can have these marked on their profile. However, for us to report them, they must have a family literacy enrollment on their account in order for us to achieve these on a federal reporting level. For IELCE, we have the 3: achieved citizenship, increased involvement in community activities, or votes or registered to vote. Again, anybody can have these marked, but only IELCE students that have that program type added to their account will be reported onto our NRS reports. And the last tab that we have up at the top is our Utah achievements. These are our civics tests. If a student comes in with a previously obtained K-12 diploma, be that outside of the United States, or they're coming to better their education, literacy, mathematics, those would be previously K-12 diplomas, as well as the seal of biliteracy. Again, a student can have 2 seals depending on the languages that they end up taking, but they must pass certain tests and everything else in order to be marked as those. Those, again, don't mark as or aren't achieved as any sort of MSG. Those are just Utah achievements that need to happen within our state. Are there any questions about the 3 tabs on the achievements page? Chris, you have a question.
Adam, just a really quick question as far as like when we're entering transcripts and we have a student that say passed the civics exam when they were in 9th or 10th grade or whatever. So they've already previously passed the civics test. How do you want us to put that date in?
Is there a date on the transcript itself, or does it just say that they've passed the civics test?
Usually it's just that they've passed the civics test. Sometimes they have a date, sometimes they don't.
I would make just a standard within your program. We don't care as long as the program stays consistent. I've had programs do it to where it's the date that the student entered or the date that you got the student's transcript. You can also just enter today's date that you are entering that you actually saw that it's in there and you're actually entering that information in. I'm good with any one of those. That doesn't matter. What we would end up doing is if we saw that on the student's transcript as part of our review, we would simply look at the transcript to see if it's on there. If it's not on there, then we would probably look for the test of the civics test to be within the student's file, or at least the grading that says that they've passed it. So that's the way that I've had most programs do it, is they just enter either today's date or when the student entered. If there is a date, I do believe that you're able to enter it way back, 2-3 years ago, which is totally fine. But again, like you said, most of them probably just say that they've passed, which go ahead and just enter like today's date and that will be okay.
Okay, we'll just continue on business as usual then. I just didn't know if there was any specific directive from USBE.
Nope, again, that date is not reported, and even on our transcripts, there's not a date that gets pulled. It simply says that the student has passed. So that's really kind of what it is we just want to make sure that the student has passed it. The date itself is not as important as it is, like, say, for the date that they've passed their whole diploma.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions before we jump on? Okay. All right, GED data matches. This has been going on for years. Within our own system, it's been going on since September when we got this up online. But this GED in UASIS, our GED data match, it happens nightly, except over the weekends. The weekends, it doesn't pull any new data down, but it does catch up on Monday morning. So any of the files that GED sends us will be uploaded on Monday morning. The preferred method for any of these GED matches is through a GED ID. Now, if you have the students working with you, you should be able to pull that if that they've marked on their system that they are working with your program. If they haven't, see if they can get there, either add that to their profile or see if they can download that number to their profile and send it to you. That is our best way to have the GED match. That way we're not looking at names or birth dates or anything like that, because we do know that sometimes birth dates can get fat fingered. We know that names can get spelled differently depending on how we enter it or depending on how we read the student's handwriting. If we can't find a GED ID inside of the system, or we don't have one, the next best way is through an SSN. Now, the SSN has to both be within our system as well as within the GED system. And so a lot of the times we may have it, but the GED system won't have it, and so we can't use the SSN. But if we do have an SSN, we'll use an SSN and some of the students' demographics to verify, like a first name, last name, date of birth kind of an idea, and then that will be 100% match. If neither of those methods actually work, then the students will get, excuse me, put onto your GED data matching page through similar names. And so those would be all of your GED data matches on that page. Now, that page can be approved or denied depending on whether those students match or whether you know that that student is correct. I will mention that a student on this page does not mean that the student has passed their GED. It simply means that they have created an account. A lot of the times I'll have programs say, hey, they were on this GED match page. Why does it not show? It's because that they didn't actually pass any subtests. They may have not passed any test at that time, but they simply created an account. GED will send us that information. So we do have times in which students create an account, but don't go farther than that. And that's okay to still data match them. Even if the student decides down the road, hey, GED is not the way I want to go more in the diploma, it's fine to still data match them. That doesn't mean that they're going to have a match inside of the system, potentially at all. It just means that we have linked that in case there are any future matches that do come down. Now, one thing to mention with these GED data matches is that we will mark the EFL MSG for passing a subtest once a subtest has come down, being marked that it has been passed. So that MSG does get automatically marked when that happens, as well as the GED HSC gets marked when the student does come down and has a completer date inside of the system. A lot of the times what I find when they don't match is that the names are spelled incorrectly, or they're just misspelled, with one letter missing. Maybe there's a hyphen missing. Something like that usually tends to do it. And so whatever they register they needs to be registered on both sides. Again, we mentioned that the GED ID is the best match. And if you can get that number, please get it and enter it into the system. Now, a couple of restrictions that happen once some of these achievements do get marked inside of the system. And the only one we really have is with the Adult Ed Diploma. Once the Adult Ed Diploma is marked, a couple of options for achievements get removed. The GED achievement, for example, that gets removed. The civics test for a student, that gets removed. And previously obtained K-12 diplomas, that option also gets removed. Now, If they already have one in there, so say for example, if a student passed a GED back in the early or in the 1990s, and they try to come in and do a diploma now, they can, and the GED will not be removed from the system. It simply means that they won't be able to add a new one to their record. Same with the civics test. The civics test will still show on the student's profile, but you won't be able to add any new ones. So before you graduate a student with an adult education diploma, please make sure that you have everything else completed, transcript, civics test, everything, and then go ahead and graduate them, as it does lock you out of some of those additional features after the fact. Now, on the students page, there are a couple of sections I want to kind of point you towards. The first one is the secondary credentials section. This happens to show right underneath that section of pre-test, the students entering EFL, if the student has 12 hours. At the bottom of that section, a new section will appear that says secondary credentials. That is for the adult education diploma, GED, or a previously obtained K-12 diploma will also show there. So you don't have to have permission or even need to go to the student's achievement page in order to see if the student has graduated. It will show on that homepage. For GEDs, there's a couple of new things that came in as of last update, and I wanted to reiterate these. The first one you'll see is with the exclamation point, says GED data match potential match. These students would have will be on your GED data matching page that you will need to either confirm or deny. That would be the reason that those are showing. Once they have been confirmed or you have entered a GED ID and a data match goes through, then you will see the GED data matched with the green check marks next to it. That lets you know that there has been a link between the system and that when the student does pass their GED or any of the future subtests, it will automatically get data updated with the student's profile. Any questions about those last couple of things?
So what would indicate whether we deny them or not?
There's not going to be anything that shows you that you denied. Denying a student would simply mean that that's not a match for that student. I do keep record of it in the back end. If you accidentally denied a student, and then came back and said, oh crap, that really is the right student, I can undo that deny. I'd probably just turn it back on, or I'd remove that deny to where they'd show back up on your GED data match. But we weren't going to show anything on that saying that there was a denied GED data match, as that's not relevant to the student. It's just we know that that match was not there in the system. But that's a good question. Okay. All right, couple more things. The student achievement report. Now that we have entered and put in a lot of achievements inside, how do we find out which achievements my students have? When are those dates? I want to see a list of, who's graduated, as I want to, show them. I get these questions a lot. And the student achievement report is our best report for that. The student achievement report does ignore the student's POP status, so it doesn't matter whether they have 12 hours, whether they have a pretest, it doesn't matter. If you have some sort of achievement this program year, the student is going to show up on that report. So it's a really good report just to see an overall summary. It doesn't even care if that's their latest MSG, which is how a student would show on table 4. There are 2 tabs on this. There's a summary. The summary shows you the grand total of all of them. So it shows you how many GEDs, how many diplomas, civics tests, those kind of things that you have entered in the system this program year. The second tab is your details tab, which gives you more details about the student, specifically which students they are, which achievements they achieved, the date that the student is achieved, who entered that, the modification dates, and who they are. That all gets added onto the details tab. Now, we are going through a minor upgrade on this, which will be coming out in our updated push. We are turning on the sorting functionality onto this report, so you'll be able to sort on a couple of those headers. You are going to be able to filter on certain achievements. So if you only wanted to see, say, those that passed your civics tests and wanted to make sure that list was up to date, you can do that. If you wanted to see just those who passed GED, you can also do that. So you will be able to update or be able to filter on those. And I noticed that on this, when I was going through this, that you couldn't link to the student's profile, like you had to go back out and search for the student. So we are adding the hot links to the student's profile onto this page that you will be able to then go in and see what profile or get to the student's profile faster than having to go out and research. But those are a couple of minor upgrades that are coming to this report, coming in about we're in about 2 weeks or so. So, talking about upcoming things in UASIS, we wanted to give you just a quick summary of what's coming up inside of UASIS. So reports have been updated with new filters, sorting functionalities. We're trying to standardize all of our reports. So that's what we're doing right now. So a lot of these new reports, or in some of our older reports, will now have sort functionalities and some new filter functionalities up at the top. Communication, this has been a big piece of programs have been asking for. The communication via email is coming into UASIS. So you will be able to send emails directly to a student. You will be able to send them to a class. You can send them to other data admins. And on a lot of the pages, specifically all of the student pages, you will be able to email the webmaster. Now, all of these communications are all permission based, so you will have to have the correct permission onto your profile before you can send any of these sort of emails, as well as the student has to give you permission to send an email from the system. But once you've sent an email, the email communication goes to and from your email, so that's where it's going to bounce back and forth. There's not going to be any sort of additional communication receiving into UASIS. It will be then through your own personal email or through the email you have inside of the system. The partner portal is also coming up onto the system as well. We do plan to do training for them. The training is not happening until the end of May and into June. We do plan to have them all completely trained by the end of June for their first or for their next reporting part. So you may still get contacts from our partners for probably the next 2 months or so. After that, it should probably phase out. They do have a functionality in which they can request email or they can request access to a student. So those that are program admins may start seeing that email come in. Once we get some of this training, I'll show you guys what those emails look like, and that way you know what to expect from those. We plan to go into testing next week, the week of the 21st. We'll be testing for about a week with my user group, as well as with some of my state people. And then our plan is to go into production the week of the 28th. It will probably be the 28th or 29th is my hope right now, unless we find some sort of bug that we need to clean up before then. So, are there any questions about this or any of the upcoming UASIS information?
I have a question.
Sure, go ahead.
And this might not pertain to everybody, but when you talked about testing with tape coming out with tape 1314, I've not been here. I've always had 1112, so I don't know what the proper procedure would be. So like on June 30th, when our fiscal year is done, should I like separate the students so they don't have an active period of participation, or what do you recommend?
No.
Okay,
No.
okay.
No, that's a good question. So this is going to be a preview for next month. So for those that are watching, next month we talk all about year end, what the process is, that kind of stuff, and we do talk about new testing information that does come. Now with this new testing information, it will be similar to the way this year's testing was when we moved in from CASAS. You don't separate. We really don't like programs mass separating all their students. It does kind of throw it programmatically wise, it still works with students' period of participation. A period of participation must have 90 days of inactivity. So just simply separating all of your students on June 30th and reactivating them on the 1st won't work. The system will ignore that separation date and still continue on. Now, with that said, what's going to happen is inside the system is any old tests that are no longer valid, and TABE isn't the only one. We know that we have some best tests that are expiring this season as well. They're not going to be rolled over, so we won't look at an entering EFL using any of those tests. But you will need to give those new tests to your students, and once those new tests are given, If the student doesn't have an existing test that is good, then the new test will take precedence and will give you the entering functioning level for the student. If there's an existing test that rolls over, so for example, those programs that because I believe CASAS reading should be coming out with a new test this year, but CASAS math is still valid throughout this program year. If they have a math CASAS or CASAS math on their report or on their profile, that will roll over as their entering functioning level for the year, as that is still the valid test. But a new reading test will need to be given. So for TABE 13-14, if they all expire on June 30th, then when you go into next year, you'll just have to give new tests for those students, and a new functioning level will be set for those, assuming that there's not any sort of extension for any of those tests.
Thank you.
Sure. We'll talk a lot more about end of year process. So if those are the kind of questions that you do have, you're welcome to email me. That way I make sure that I cover them in our meeting next month, but that will be all what we talk about next month, about the processes that we expect the programs to do and what you will expect from me as we do go into the new program year.
I do have a question about email.
Sure, go ahead, Brian.
Is it going to give the option to like mass email all the students, like in the case of like a snow day or just a major announcement for everybody?
We don't have, actually, I'd never programmed in a functionality for the whole program. We can look at about upgrading that. Your mass email right now would have to be by class. So you would cancel each one of those classes. You can give that permission out to the student or to the staff members, to the teachers, so that they could send those emails out and then it could be directed to them. But no, we will look about adding a functionality to where you can blast the entire program for that reason of, school is canceled, snow day, whatever. We will make sure that we can do that. That won't be in this iteration, but we'll make sure we have it out before the beginning of next program year. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
That would be helpful.
Any other questions? Okay. Well, then, thank you guys for coming today. We do plan to have our next meeting next month. It will be May 15th. Will be our third Thursday. We will be talking about end of year processes. Again, it'll be what we expect you guys as programs to do and what you'll expect us at the state level to do with the system. This is our first year rolling over with UASIS, so it'll be a new process for a lot of people, but it should be good. We'll have all of that next month. Thanks, guys, for coming.